to be boss number one. And it doesn't work that way when you're in a blended family. There's other ways of parenting that are happening with your child that you have to work together on. You have to just remind yourself that it's not about your agenda, but it's about the greater good for your child. So that was definitely a challenge that I didn't see was going to happen, and I had to kind of face that headlong. So,
well, one of the things that I was most concerned about when I was ready to make the plunge again was I wanted to make sure that my child got along with whoever I was going to marry. So that was important to me. And so when and I was careful about who I brought into his life, because I didn't just want somebody that I wasn't sure if we were going to make it to have an impact in his life, because that's just as devastating to a child to introduce somebody new into their life and then to take them away shortly thereafter. So I wanted to make sure that whoever I brought in was going to be there permanent. So when it was time for her to get to know our son, she did fine. I kind of looked from a distance and observed how she acted around him, how she treated him, and it didn't take very long for him to act out and her to correct him, and that was fine. So she handled it beautifully.
and that was actually one of the things that made all the difference in the world was his attitude in how he was going to let me be a part of their life, and not hold me back or at arm's length, and just really just let me be a part of our son's life, and not just be kind of like I know there's a lot of phrases out there like bonus parent, or we use the phrase stepmom or stepdad, and in our home we decided that it was he was our son. So we kind of used the way that we labeled our family to help with the blending, and we found that actually helped a lot. And so to this day, sometimes I have to say, people give me a funny look because our son is redheaded, green-eyed, and super, super pale skin and doesn't look like me. And so people will give me a funny look when they say, oh, this is my son. And they'll be like, what? And I have to say, he's actually my stepson. And even just saying it is, I feel like, oh, I hope he doesn't feel like that I'm labeling him, I hope he doesn't think that I'm thinking, something less than just my son. But he's old enough now. He's actually grown. He's going to be 21. But he's old enough now to understand that I don't like to say it as much as he probably doesn't like to hear it, because, children just want to have that acceptance. And so trying to blend families, we felt like to be blended, that was an important thing.
Yeah, so she makes the comment that he was born in her heart, and that's when, so he's only 10 years old for her.
So every year I always tell him, you're only 9 this year, or, whatever it is.
So, and there's, there is, so for us, there were some points that we really considered when we got married, and those we're going to touch on those. And this is just based on our experience. Everybody's experience is a little different, but maybe there's some things that will help you if you're looking to start a new family, or your ex is starting a new family. So, but for us, we wanted to start with a solid marriage. So, like I said, when we really started getting serious, before we started getting serious, I interviewed her and made sure that we were on the same path, and that helped to start the solid marriage, because I didn't want to get married and then find out later that, oh, well, we have different philosophies about this, and just life in general. I mean, you want to make sure that the foundation that you're building is solid. So that's kind of what we did. And
so the way that, and this is, Debbie says a lot, this is, we're Bible-based, and that's how our home has been. And, the Bible has a specific order of family, and it's, God at the center, and then the husband and the wife, and then the children, which when you come with a ready-made family, that can prove to be difficult, especially if you're a single parent with your kids. There's that automatic human response of being protective of your children. And even if it's somebody that, you know, you want to spend your life with, that your kids came first in this situation. And it's easy to want to protect them and to kind of, you know, put them ahead and put them first because that's what you had been doing for so long. And if we look at the biblical order, it's, you know, God at the center, and then the spouses, and then the children.
So
Focusing on having a strong relationship with your spouse is key, especially when you have the emotional scars and disappointments of a previous broken relationship, because you're bringing your children into the relationship, but you're also bringing those insecurities that you developed because of a previous broken relationship. So your new relationship could easily take a lot of hits in those areas.
yeah, and going from being a single parent, you know, and my child was first in my life, so, you know, I had, you know, when I'd gotten divorced, I decided to go back to college and get a degree. And so when I did that, you know, there were other activities that were happening around me. I was involved in school, but when my son came to stay with me and when it was time for me to have him, those were things that didn't happen. It was him first. So when it was time to get remarried, I had to kind of adjust that a little bit and you know, not put him on the back burner, but definitely put her first and establish our relationship, because our relationship was going to be key to having a healthy relationship for him when we got married. So that was something that we really pushed on. There's things that we tried to establish that were our routines and our things that we did and our traditions. So, you know, we would always decorate the Christmas tree. He puts the star on. You know, little things. We'd gather around the table after dinner and play some games. You know, family games, board games, and not all of those ended well. Sometimes he would. we're competitive, and he would get mad and throw the thing off the table because you know he didn't win.
Right.
But
there's one particular game we decided we can't play.
yeah, we've never played that game since.
I do want to say one thing though. There is a handout, and make sure all of you have the handout. And these different points are on the handout, and I believe it will be available online for anybody who's watching live stream. There's a handout, so some of the notes that you might want to take are already on there, and you could just request that, and we'll make sure that you get that. And we're just in point 1, so we've got a ways to go.
There's a few, 6 maybe. So, you know, being fully committed to each other, that you know, that was, we had a solid marriage. We decided that this is what we want to do. This is how we want to raise our family. So then it was being fully committed. And when you say yes to marrying someone that has, well, she can tell you more about this, but when you say yes to marrying someone who already has a child, or you're bringing your own in, you're also making that commitment to that child as well. Right. And then you have to kind of start that before you even get married, before you say I do.
Right. Yeah, it's important to start to change your mindset. And, you know, when you're first, when you're not a blended family, there's the us versus them mentality. When you are trying to co-parent and you're a single parent and the other parent maybe has remarried, there's still an us versus them mentality. It's just a natural thing. You're not part of their blended family. You're still being a single parent. So to blend a family, the first battle is to overcome that, you know, there's me and then there's them type of mindset. And that should start to be resolved or be, you know, thought through before the marriage, because, you know, that you're going to get married and commit to each other and still have that separation. You want to go into a blended family in the right frame of mind and the right mindset. You know, it's going to show any children that are involved that that you're committed to each other, but you're also committed to them. It's not just, you know, 2 high school kids running off and getting married. You've got a lot more going on to build a family.
Yeah, it's important not to play favorites as well. And that's not only among your children and your blended children, but also with your spouse as well. Because sometimes your child may feel like, oh, well, you take her side over mine, or you're going to have to balance that, and that's a difficult thing to do. And especially, if you're bringing in, you have your children and they have their children, and you bring them all together, then naturally you're going to feel a little bit closer to your biological children because you've gone through the painful, divorce, and you've been through that trauma. And it's important not to, not to favor one child over the other, and to take the time. That's easier said than done, I understand, but it's important to take the time to spend equal amount of time with the children, and then be careful about the way you correct them and the things you say to them, because children pick up on these things. When Catherine was growing up, her dad had this tradition, and her mom, where they would take the kids out, and it would be just one kid at a time, and you had one sister and two brothers. So, but each one would get a special date night, and it was just them and the parents, or just one parent, but you got to feel special. I grew up in a house full of boys, and so we all did boy things. We played Little League. We did, played basketball. We were in Boy Scouts, and so my dad was heavily involved, but my mom, she was as well. So she was there making cookies, and she was the den mother, and she was in the dugout making sure we were all cared for. So there was no differentiation between us. We were all equal.
And, we only have one child, so that helps in our situation. There's not really that favoritism type of thing. Sometimes I have to tell him, though, we're not the Three Musketeers. Sometimes Dad and I do have date night. We do our own thing, but because we include him in everything. But there is the danger of trying to play favorites against the other parents and putting the child in the middle. Do you prefer them or do you prefer us? And that happens, and that's I've seen it happen, and have had it happen against me, or against us, I should say. And you have that's something that you have to be super careful of with your children, because they're put in a position of having to choose. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to blend and erase that line of separation for these children, because they want a place of safety and security. And to put him in the middle and say, who do you prefer? Which house do you prefer? What do you like to do best? That is super, super dangerous, to put that in a child's mind, because
I don't think we've ever you've never made his favorite food that his mom makes, so that was something that we've tried to, there are our traditions and their traditions, and so we've tried to acknowledge that the best we can.
Right, exactly. So we know what he likes wherever he's at. If he's with us or if he's with his mom and stepdad, we know that they have the things that they do, and we try not to step on that, because then we put them in a position of comparison. We let them have their thing, and we try to do our thing with him. So one of the things I touched a little bit on, and this is point number 3, is managing your expectations. Like any investment in life, you pay into something, and then you have to wait for the return. Your time and effort that you invest into your spouse's children may not be returned right away, but will eventually show growth and pay off. If your mindset is long-term, your expectations won't be met with disappointment when you don't see results right away. So speaking back again to my expectations that I had, these unrealistic things that I thought was going to happen, was we're going to be one big happy family. He's going to adore me. I'm going to be like, the room mother, and, I'm going to be involved in everything, and all of his kids are going to come to our house because I'm going to be like the best mom on the block. And I had all these ideas in my head of how spectacular this was going to be, and I'm like, oh, I love you so much, and you belong to me now, and all these things. And he's like, okay. And you're like, but I'm showering you with love. I'm giving you affection. I've committed my time and my life to you and you're rolling your eyes at me? Like that, what happened? What else could I do? I literally would say, what else could I possibly do? But I've learned that it's a process and it is an investment, and that shouldn't stop us from investing just because we don't see anything happening just yet. In the beginning, I would get birthday cards and Mother's Day cards, and they would be the generic, "You're so special, Happy Mother's Day." And I'd be like, "Oh, that's nice. I know, his dad probably forced him into it, here." But now I get, "I love you, Mom," Mother's Day cards, and "Happy birthday, Mom." And that didn't come easy. That was an investment that I had to just remind myself. It's not about me, it's about him going through the process and getting comfortable with being in a blended family. So my expectations, really, I could have probably managed them a little better. One of the things that I touched on here is if your mindset is long-term, then you won't be met with so much disappointment because there's a future. You're not looking for instant gratification. You're thinking, this is long-term. I mean, we're in it for the long haul, and today may not feel like progress, but we've got the rest of our lives to work on this. So we're just going to keep going.
Our next point is deny your right to negativity. So that one is, again, that one's a whole lot easier said than done. Kind of what we mean by that is, you've been through a traumatic experience, whatever the reason for the divorce was, it's painful, and you bring that with you, and you want to say negative things about the other person, and how could they do this, and how could they do that, and you want to bring that, but you got to be careful about tainting your child's opinion of their parent. So we don't want to do that, and that's it's a lot. Like I said, it's a lot easier said than done. But
and we made the decision right off the bat that we were going to do our very, very best not to bring even a frustration out in front of him. If our parenting styles were different, or if a decision was made that we didn't agree with, or whatever it was, we decided right away that wasn't going to happen, that we were going to do our very best to even keep our facial expressions neutral, and we did, actually, I have to say, we did really good. I don't know sometimes how you get through, denying your opinion, because everybody is opinionated, everybody has opinions, but that was something that we decided right away, because my fear is when you're the one feeding the negativity, the child becomes resentful. But the problem with that is most of the time the child isn't resenting the person that you're bad-mouthing. They're resenting you for even saying it. And you may be in the right to say something negative or to gripe or complain, but it will cost you, and there will be resentment, and it will be towards you, and then there's those wounds to fix and to
no matter what no matter what grounds you have to say what you want to say, that is still their parent that you're talking about, and that's their family, and how dare you say that, and so that'll just churn resentment for them. So, and then if you have close contact with the other parent, that gets a little even trickier. When we first got married, we had him every other weekend, and we had him a couple weeks in the summer. We had him every other holiday. So we had a lot of contact. We had a lot of contact with his mom and his stepdad, and our parenting styles are very different. So we had to kind of roll our eyes at each other and give little sideways looks, and but ultimately that person is a person of authority in his life as well, and so you have to respect that may not be the way you would do things, but when you let that child go to the other household, then they have to live by that household's rules, and so we had to kind of be careful of that. And it's tough because when the child comes back, they'll have depending on the environment they're in, they'll come back with that emotional baggage and that psychological baggage that they've had, whatever. It may not be the best environment they're going into, or maybe it's a really great environment. So for us, what it was is whenever we would get him back, he would always have his walls up. And we would work so hard to bring his defenses down to get him to just open up and to trust us and to, but when he would come back, he would have it. It was always like 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. So it was a struggle, but eventually.
Yeah, and that was mainly just because of having 2 different environments, having to deal with 2 different environments. And kids want to know that they're safe, and they want to know that all is right in their world. And that's up to us to make that happen. That's up to all the parents to make that happen. If you're a single parent dealing with your child being part of a blended family, no matter where they're at, whether they're with you or whether they're with them, them knowing that all is right in their world is the key to keeping them from putting those walls up and just, trying to stay civil and pleasant and, just curb that negativity.
So when we first got him and he came to live with us, because there was a switch at some point where it was, we now had him physical custody of him. So the thing was, we tried to make him feel as at home as he was in the other house. So we had a TV in his room, and he had video games, but eventually that's where he spent all his time, and we're trying to blend a family. So we moved all that stuff out of his room, and we tried to incorporate a lot of family activities, things that we could all do together as a family that would bring us closer together, because we needed to form that bond together as a family. So we worked hard to do that.
Right, and I think that brings us actually to point number 5, which is taking ownership. And that really is on me in my experience, because Paul came, with a child, and I now had to commit to, a new husband and already have a ready-made family. Trying to blend a family with a mine and theirs mentality is difficult and maybe even impossible. Phrases like my husband's kids or even the label stepchild creates a hard line of separation that kids pick up on, and they will follow your lead and keep a wall of separation between you and them. So for me, I had to be the one to really push harder in this area. And I had to make up my mind and have a definitive decision that he is now partly mine. Now this is a child that I am an authority in his life. I'm responsible for him. I choose to love him, to care for him, to call him my own. I had to take ownership and say, this is our son. And this is a phrase we use, in the beginning a few times
I was guilty of saying my son instead of our son, and she would let me know that, hey, he's mine too.
Right, and it's a process. It's a process, so I forgive you. But now it's our son. So I say, this is my son. This is my family. This is my kid. He's my life. And taking ownership and letting the children hear you take ownership of them. There's something powerful about knowing that you belong. And that goes for adults too. And, I've never gone through the process of divorce. I have experienced the residuals of it through my husband. But I can understand the idea of belonging and then not belonging. And the children feel the same way. They belonged to a certain way of life. And then it was like, where do I belong? Do I belong here? Do I belong there? And to have somebody, when you're blending a family, and to have that person that's new in their life say, you belong to me. You belong to us. And hopefully the other family that they're also blending into, or the single parent, is saying the same thing. Because there's power in knowing that you belong somewhere. And when kids feel like they belong, then there's a lot of benefits from that. Your disciplinary problems are not as much. The acceptance is not as much. Their walls aren't as high. So belonging is a big thing for kids. So taking ownership as the parents and trying to blend the family is super important as well.
And it's all about relationships, and that's the sixth point that we have in your handout. And that's bonding, loving, boundaries, forgiveness, encouragement, limits, learning from each other, growing together, developing traditions, and creating memories. So those are things that's important that you do, and that helps you, have a strong marriage, that helps you to take ownership, that helps you to limit your negativity. When you're doing things together, you're creating new memories, you're creating new experiences, and it's bonding with the blended family, with the children and the stepchildren or the half children, and it's getting to know them, and really, there are times where our son comes home and he's mad, and it's one of those, if we had a cat, he'd kick it, but he's had a bad day, and we can tell, but that took some time and some getting used to, because we had to be able to break down his walls, to be able to understand, like, oh, okay, well, that's out of character for him. He doesn't normally do that. Or so now when he comes home and he snaps, and we ask him a question and he's like this snappy one-word answers, we understand, oh, he had a bad day at work. And so, and he's opened up and he's learned to like let that out, and to talk to us about what's going on and things that are happening. And he talks a lot more to her than he does to me. He feels safe. And I really appreciate that, the fact that he can go to her and tell her everything that's bothering him. He doesn't tell her everything. There are some things he still comes to me about, but it's encouraging to see that he trusts her with matters that are important to him.
Yeah, and we don't have everything right, and it really is a day by day process. And I look back when he was a lot younger and more moldable, and I think to myself, man, if I only knew then what I know now. And I guess all parents are that way about your child, whether it's your child's biological or not. But I found myself personally overcompensating to balance his life from one household to the next. And I would go from, if the other household was on this extreme, I'd go all the way to this extreme instead of just bringing it into the middle and trying to find balance. And it was just it's just been a day-to-day process. And, we've never parented a young adult, so we're learning as we go even now. And we still deal with the blended aspect of it and trying to make it work, and trying not to let old resentments pop up, or try not to let, the his and hers, separation happen. And it's, you can't really walk on eggshells, though, when you're in a relationship. I mean, it's all in. And that's the same with, when you get into a relationship with somebody with children, with those children, it's all in. You have to have, the good and the bad, the ups and the downs. That's what relationship is all about. Yeah. And kids don't want somebody who's trying to be perfect all the time, and that really was me. Yeah. I really was just trying to be perfect all the time where he was concerned. I was like, I'm not going to raise my voice. I'm going to talk logically to him. I'm going to explain, and he's going to get it, and then he's going to grow from it. And none of that happened. And before you know it, I'm yelling at him to clean his room. And I was like, I said I wasn't going to raise my voice. But it happens, and that's what relationship is about. And, if we cultivate our relationship with each other, and everybody has their role in the family, then that strengthens and really makes a strong blended family.
Yeah. And then, there's the aspect, maybe you're not ready to take the step, but your other spouse, your former spouse is ready to do that, and they remarry and they have a blended family. It's hard not to make comparisons. Hey, does your new dad cook for you, or is he a better cook than I am? Does he throw the ball better? You just have to focus on being the best you that you can be, because if you're trying to make comparisons and, oh, you know, are they better? Does this house, they have this, do they do that? Then it's easy to fall into the negativity where you're thinking, oh, I can't do this or I can't do that. But focus on your strengths and the things that you do well and the things that you can do well. And, you know, take a look at some things that maybe, you know, hey, like when we've looked at him and been like, you know, we don't want to yell or we don't want to do this. And we've kind of taken a step back and been like, well, you know, sometimes it's okay to raise your voice to let him know that there's some urgency. And, you know, we're running into the problem where it's with a lot of today's youth where they don't accept responsibility quickly as like when we did when we were younger. So he's, you know, there are things that we're like, why don't you drive already? You're almost 21. And we want him to do things that he's not ready to do. So we have to be careful about that and just encourage him to grow at his own pace and to experience things. And so we've learned to kind of let him grow at his own speed, and he's bonded with us, and we're a family, and he doesn't make, you know, he's, hey, there's my parents, you know, he doesn't say, hey, there's my dad and my stepmom.
Right.
It's there's my parents.
Yeah.
So, and if you're open to your journey taking you into a new relationship, consider what your expectations are beforehand and make sure that your goals and your ideas are realistic and obtainable. You don't want to go into it, you know, with rose-colored glasses and think that this is going to be the way it is. But you want to be able to set a path for success and to be able to achieve that in the future.
And then just at the end of this, really, to just bring some encouragement. You know, it's important to not let yourself get lost in the process. You know, a lot of times we want so badly for something to be successful that we put ourselves on the back burner and we forget the journey that we're on. And if one, if not both, people that are trying to blend a family are on a journey of recovery and going through those steps. Even if you've gone through the steps, there's just the residual elements of being in a broken relationship or that sort of thing. So just to remember, you know, not to forget yourself, you know, to give yourself love and encouragement through the process. Take it one day at a time, and, you know, you can learn from the failures, which we've had to do, and celebrate the successes. And, you know, one thing that we have heard a lot around here is to have an attitude of gratitude. And it's a choice that you make every day, that you're going to get up and you're going to have an attitude of gratitude, that you're going to find something in your day to be grateful about, even in the most difficult times, even when blending your family doesn't seem worth the work. To find an attitude of gratitude makes all the difference in the world. We have 2 quotes from Dr. James Dobson to leave with you tonight. The first one says, if you're going through difficult times today, hold steady. It will change soon. If you are experiencing smooth sailing and easy times now, brace yourself. It will change soon. The only thing you can be certain of is change, and that's the truth. And especially when you have, when you're in a family situation, in a blended family, change happens a lot. There's things changing all the time. The second quote is, comparison is the root of all feelings of inferiority. The moment you begin examining other people's strengths against your most obvious weaknesses, your self-esteem starts to crumble. So our encouragement to you is to just take time for yourself and remind yourself of these things and to keep your chin up. Sometimes we have to tell ourselves, quit comparing, quit judging, quit complaining, don't be negative, you know, work on our relationship.
You know, and every relationship, every, you know, relationship is different. The new relationship that you want to embark on is different than the previous one. You're not the same person you were in the previous relationship. They're not the same spouse you were married to previously. So, you know, it's difficult, or it's important to remember not to make those comparisons, because you're not the same person. You've experienced something traumatic, and you've grown from it, and you've healed from it, and you're going to move forward from that. So just, you know every day brings a new challenges, and every day is a new day, and you get to start all over.
That's right. And if anybody who's watching live on the live stream, if you have any questions or anything about any of this, feel free to send those questions in, and we'll be more than happy to help any way that we can. And we just hope that this helped you today. We hope this gave you some food for thought, maybe some tips on how to have a successful blended family. Sister Jenny, we're going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Brother Paul and Sister Catherine. Wow, that was pretty awesome. I learned some things, and not remarried, so but I still learned some things. So before we close this out, we want to again thank all of you for tuning in and joining us online for this seminar. And to remind you that our next seminar will be July 21st, again at 6 p.m. And Sister Debbie should be here, and we'll move forward on that. Again, thank you, Paul and Catherine Berry, for your time and your input. And that's going to end our seminar tonight. God bless.